So now we're just going to do a bunch of different examples of large number cases. All right? And so the biggest thing with here is understand how the large numbers work, what conversions you use for millions, billions, and trillions, and knowing how to use your calculator to do this. All right, so I'm going to do the first couple of pages. I'm going to do it by, split it up by pages. All right, so I'm going to do page 2 and 3. So the current total debt, so this is a lot like the last example. Suppose that the current total debt in Illinois is $158.8 billion. So again, it's in billions. The population of the state of Illinois is 12.8 million people. Find the debt per person. So again, we want to divide the debt by the population. The biggest thing again is one of them is in billions and one of them is in trillions, and I have to take that into account when I do my division. I can't just take the 500 or the 158.8 divided by 12.8 because again, it's not the correct number. Billions is different than millions. So I've got to remember that billion, 158.8 billion, as a number is that 158.8 times 10 to the 9, right? I want to add 9 places after the 158. And so that's the unit I'm going to use for billions. And then the 12.8 million is a different conversion. It's 12.8 times 10 to the 6. It's a slightly smaller, right? So I want to add 6 spots after the 12. All right, and so those are what we're going to use. And those are the numbers we're going to divide by. So I'm going to take my debt, right, my dollars, and my people, and divide it out. So my dollars, 158.8 billion, right, that's why it's times 10 to the 9th, divided by the 12.8 times 10 to the 6th, because the 10 to the 6th gives me my millions of people. Right, and again, be careful when you type this out on your calculator. Make sure you put, where I have parentheses, you need parentheses. You need the 158 times the 10.9, 10 raised to the 9. So again, when you type it on the calculator, and then end parentheses, divide by parentheses, 12.8, 10 to the 6th. If you do that, again, make sure you're very careful when you do that, right, it should come out second. I need to type mine out because I didn't get this pre-done. All right, 12. 406.25 per person. So if we were to take the debt that our state, the Illinois, currently owes, and split it evenly among the people, and split the debt the state owes, each person in the state of Illinois would owe about $12,000 per person, a little over $12,000 in debt per person. All right, the next example. Suppose your grandmother's collected 8 million pennies. How many dollars is that 8 million pennies worth? So over her lifetime, she's collected pennies in jars and things like that, which this would actually take up quite a bit of space. All right, so she has 8 million pennies. All right. How many dollars are they worth? Well, remember, each dollar $1 is the same as 100 pennies. Right? 1 cent. All right, there are 100 cents per dollar. All right, so I need to convert between pennies and dollars. And not only do I need to convert between pennies and dollars, but I've got 1 million pennies. I can't just take 8 divided by 100. That doesn't make sense. I have 8 million. All right, so remember, 8 million is the same as 8 times 10 to the 6th. And then we're going to divide by 100, right? Because we're going to take our 8, 10 to the 6 pennies times $1 divided by our 100 pennies. Right? It's just like our conversions we did before. We're converting pennies to dollars. So you're going to take that big number, the 8 million, divided by 100. Again, when you type it in the calculator, just make sure you're careful. It's 8 times 10 to the 6. Divide by 100. All right. It's a pretty good chunk of change, right? 8 million. Again, this would take up a lot of space. But again, a lifetime's a long time to collect pennies. All right. The mint, or the people who do the mint wouldn't like that very much because, again, they like to keep the pennies in circulation. All right, but that's how much it would be worth, $80,000. All right, I'm going to do one more quick one here just to kind of, because it's something that popped up on Twitter not that long ago, and I've been meaning to add it to my notes. All right, Elon Musk has been on Twitter, been on talking about it. And so Elon Musk is worth about, again, I'm rounding up. All right, at one point he was pretty close to that. $300 billion. All right, there's about, again, I'm going to round up, 400 million people in the U.S. All right, roughly 4 million people. And so somebody had made the joke, or made the comment, and actually it was a fairly famous person, that, well, he could give $1 billion almost to every United States person. But they didn't do the conversion right. That's not even close to being true. If you actually do the division, you take the 300 billion and divide it by the 400 million people, doesn't even come close to $1 billion per person. Doesn't even come close to $1 million per person. All right, so if we do the numbers. All right, so 300 million, or billion, not million, billion. All right, that would be how much dollars that Elon Musk is worth, divided by the 400 million people. Right, so 10 to the 9th, that's how I get my billion. 10 to the 6th is how I get my number of people. So if you take your $300 billion that Elon Musk is worth, divided by, and again, make sure you put parentheses, 400 million people, so times 10 to the 6th to get our million. Roughly, each individual person would get $750 per person. So again, that's the difference between billions and trillions. Remember the debt one? It was a lot bigger than that because trillion is a lot bigger number than billion. Even though both of them are ridiculously large, they're big. So again, this made its way around Twitter a while back, where people made that. But that's where people didn't understand large numbers. All right. So again, if Elon Musk split his money evenly amongst the U.S. population, each person would get around $750. That's it. $750. Which really wouldn't, you could go buy something nice for yourself, but that would be basically it. All right, so that's why it's very important to understand how large numbers work, because you can make very, very wrong assumptions about things if you don't understand how large numbers work. All right, let's do the next example. All right, so this one is going to be, again, comparing large numbers to different types of things, and we're going to have to do some conversions here. So this is kind of a throwback. Large numbers with conversions. All right, so suppose we line up all the people in India. All right, so India is a very large population. All right, there's 1.35 billion people approximately in India. Assume that when they're standing, so we're assuming standing rate, that they occupy about 20 inches of space, right? That's it. So again, you've got somebody standing, and they're occupying 20 inches. All right, that's what. And so what we're going to do is we're going to line up all the people next to each other, and all of the people lined up next to each other are going to take up 20 inches of space. All right, so we're going to line up all 1.35 billion people and see how much space they occupy. So first we're going to find it in inches, and then we're going to convert it to miles, and then we're going to compare it to wrapping it around the earth. All right, so first we're going to determine how many inches of space would these 1.3 billion people take up if we lined them up next to each other, and they took up about 20 inches of space. All right, so how many inches altogether? Well, we've got 1.35 billion. So we've got to remember what the 1.35 billion is. All All right, and we're going to take that times the 20 inches, right? Because each one of them are going to take up 20 inches of space. But I can't just straight multiply because I've got to take into account the billion. All right, so it's really 1.35 times 10 to the ninth. That's the billions of people. And that's the number you're going to have to multiply 20 by. All right, and as it turns out, again, depending on your calculator, it's 27 billion. All right, the 27, or some calculators would come out 2.7 e to the 10, which again would be our 27 billion inches. All right, that's what it is, 27 billion inches. Another way you can sort of figure it out is if you took this to 20 and multiplied it by the 1.35, if you do that, it would come out. So you take just the 1.35 times 20, and that would give you your 27 times 10 to the ninth, or 27 billion if we rewrite it as billions, because that's the easier way to talk about it, right? 27 billion inches. I gotta put my inches up here. All right, so the people of India would occupy 27 billion inches of space. All right, so that's a fairly large number. It's in inches, so we want to say, all right, well, what is that in miles? All right, what would 27 billion inches be in miles? All right, so now we have to do one of our conversions. All right, so remember, there's not a direct conversion between, you can look up your conversion table. There's not a direct conversion between inches and miles. So I've got to go inches to miles. So what you have to go first is, you have to go inches to feet, and then feet to miles. So remember, there are 12 inches in 1 foot, and then there are 5,280 feet per 1 mile. Those are the conversions that you would use, and you can look those up on the table, the conversion table. All right, so we start off with our 27 billion inches. All right. Which, remember, is 27 times 10 to the ninth. We're going to multiply that by our conversion factor. So that's in inches. So 27 times 10 to the ninth inches times, well, first I have to convert inches to feet. So for every 1 foot, there's 12 inches. So the 12 inches goes in the bottom, 1 foot goes in the top. So the inches will cancel. And then I'm going to go ahead and write out the miles. So again, for every 1 mile, there's 5,280 feet. And so miles is what we're left with, right? The feet cancel out. And so we're going to take our 27 billion, divide by 12, or multiply by 1 over 12, and divide by 5,280, or again, multiply by that fraction. All right, so when we do that, and you carefully multiply that out, so make sure you're careful, kind of where I have parentheses, you'll have parentheses, so 27 times 10 to the ninth times 1 over 12, or divide by 12, times 1 over 5,280, or divide by 5,280. That comes out to be 426,136.36. I'm just going to round up to the whole mile. All right. So, 1.35 billion people who occupy 12 inches of space apiece will take up 426,136 miles of space, if I can spit out the number correctly. All right, well, to kind of just compare that, right? Well, that's, again, a pretty large number. So just making sense of things. Sometimes, and people will use this a lot. Like I said, they'll use this when they're talking about it. They'll use this in articles and tweets and things like that. So that's a number, all right. So we've got over 400,000 miles. What does that mean? Well, compare it to something that we can sort of visualize. And so we want to compare it to something we can visualize it. All right, so we'll visualize wrapping those people around the Earth. All right, and we specifically picked the center of the Earth, which would be the equator. All right, so we're going to wrap those people, line them up, and then we're going to see how they wrap around the Earth. And so the Earth at the equator has a circumference, right? The distance around, right? If you go around the Earth, the distance around the Earth is about 25,000 miles, all right? Which means we're definitely going to wrap around it more than once. So how many times will the 1.35 billion people wrap around the Earth, the circumference of the Earth? All right, well, you're going to take the number 426,136 divided by how many miles it takes. So again, this would be the miles of people, and this would be the miles around the Earth. All right, so the miles will cancel out and leave me with just how many times around. All right, so 426,136 divided by 25000. Again, I'm just going to round to the whole number. And when you round to the whole number, that comes out to be about 17 times. Again, it's an estimation. We're doing a lot of estimation. So, 1.35 billion people lined up. And I'm going to assume it's like shoulder to shoulder, right? So, lined up, shoulder to shoulder, would wrap around the Earth about, and I'm going to use the word about 17 times. Because again, it is statistical information, so we made a few assumptions. We assumed everybody would only occupy so much space, and then we did some rounding. All right, so about 17 times they would wrap around the Earth. All right, we're going to stop there. I'll pick up the next example. So again, we're just going to be doing a bunch of these large number examples, and I'll do the next set of notes in the next video.